Hello everyone, thank you for coming here today. I'll be discussing what I'm always discussing at TC, which is basically the community around ERCs, EIP, and standardization. But today I'm going to have a look at from a different point of view. Last year we looked at this. This is roughly a graph of all the ERCs that exist, or at least that was the ERCs from last year, with their different status, whether they're final, draft, and so on. And yeah, it's something we are really interested in because, like, we at OpenZeppelin write smart contracts for everybody to use. We are, to some extent, the reference implementation of many things. So we really want to have a look at what ERCs are out there, and we try to contribute to this space by also writing our own. And if we look at the evolution over the year, like, there is no significant thing to discuss. Like, yeah, everything is going on. A lot of draft ERCs, a few less stagnant, so maybe people have revived ERCs, and yeah, overall it's the same thing. But this is just part of the ecosystem. Like, the ecosystem is much bigger. This is all the EIPs. So ERCs are a subset of the ERCs. And you can see it's no longer colored by status, it's colored by type. So everything you saw before for ERCs is now light blue, and you can see other stuff. And you have a big cluster of ERCs, but you also see a significant cluster that is green, which are the core EIPs. And the core EIPs are the ones that define the behavior of the EVM. And it's the one that we at OpenZeppelin are particularly interested in because they define the virtual machine that will run our contract. And so we want to know how this works in order to build good contracts. And sometimes we even have ideas on what we could put in this space to help us build better contracts. And it's very hard to push stuff because we're not core devs, and core devs are basically the one deciding. So we decided, let's become core devs. So I'm very, very proud to announce today that OpenZeppelin wants to be part of this core dev endeavor. And in order to do so, we just launched our new execution client. And obviously, being OpenZeppelin, we will optimize our clients to be more effective at running OpenZeppelin contracts. And because we are a smart contract developer, we are writing it in Yule, which is quite interesting for us because it means that our clients needs to run inside another client. No, we are not going to do that. I'm sorry. No, we're not going to do that, but we're still interested in EIPs, and we're still trying to propose EIPs. And core devs reject them, and that's okay. That's part of the process, and we're not going to start fighting that. There is a big roadmap ahead for them. But the question is, who writes those standards? If you look at the ERCs, there are roughly 580 ERCs authored by about 1,000 unique authors, and you have roughly 2.6 authors per ERCs. And whenever you do this kind of statistic, you have this common distribution that happens everywhere. You would see the same distribution if you were ranking earthquake and things like that. You have this inverse function that's happening. And you see that a few authors have written a lot of ERCs, and a lot of authors have written just one ERC. But those are all the ERCs, including the draft one and the withdrawal one. So if we look at the one that possibly have a bigger impact, we're going to just look at the final ones. And the final ones are just 134 today. I mean, last week when I prepared the slide, for 281 unique authors. So only like about a quarter of the authors have gone all the way to finalizing an ERC. And you can see that you have the same distribution if you look only at final ERCs. The number of authors on average per ERC is a bit higher for the final one. I think this just basically means that if you work in group, it's less likely to be forgotten on the side, and maybe you can share the effort. And also, if you share your idea with other people, it's more likely to succeed. But we can look at the same thing for EIPs. I mean, and here it's core EIPs. I'm not looking into the networking and the meta and all the other, just the one that defines the EVM. And like you have, in this case, fewer unique authors than core EIPs. And it's a way smaller community. There are almost, I mean, not almost as many, there were 580 ERCs, but it's comparable, and there are basically a quarter of the almost 1,000 unique authors you had for ERCs. So it's a way smaller community with people authoring a lot of them. Vitalik being a particular case, but like if you just look at the top 10, they all have more than 15 EIPs. And those are all EIPs, including the draft one, like Guillaume Ballet has a lot that are Verkle and stateless related. If you look at the final one, he goes out of this, unfortunately, but you still have like a lot of I mean, a smaller group of authors for these final ERCs. So it's a way smaller community than ERCs, I would say. And the thing is that ERCs and EIPs are supposed to be governed by the same workflow, same process, in the sense that it's EIP1 that defines how you write such a standard document and how you get it to evolve. So is it the same community? Like, it's governed by the same rules, or is there any overlap between the two? And I think there should be some overlap. And if we look, this is all the authors that have authors either core EIPs or ERCs, and the blue is the fraction of their authorship that is core EIPs, and the red is ERC. So basically, if you each column vertically is an author, they are sorted. So like, if you only authored ERCs, you are red. If you only authored EIPs, you're blue. And if you author both, you are one of the 54. You are somewhere in the middle. So here, first, like, we see what we saw yet previously is that an overwhelming part of the standardization effort, and in terms of numbers of contributors, is on the ERC part. But also, like, the overlap is quite small. If we don't look in percentage of everybody's contribution, but in raw number, it might be difficult for you to see in this. I hope on the recording it's better. The slides are available on my website. You can see that what's interesting is around the middle, we see that this part, those are ERC authors that have authored more ERCs than the other ones. So what I would guess here is their profile that are a bit like me is they've written many ERCs, and at some point they want to try it into the EIP world, and sometimes met a lot of frustration. On the other end, there are a few EIP authors that have written ERCs very, very early on, like in the first 2 or 3 years of Ethereum, when there was also like the community was, I think, more tightly coupled. Those are for all core EIP and ERCs. So you know the drill. We're only going to look at the final ones now. If you look at the final one, fewer person on both sides, overall the same dynamic. No, it's not the same. Sorry. You're right, I clicked the wrong button and they look very much alike. Thank you very much. Those are the final one. It looks very much the same. Maybe the EIP side grew a bit in proportion. And if you look at the intersection, it's only 10%. So in our entire space, only 10 individuals have written both final core EIPs and final ERCs. I think this is like really showing like those are two very different communities. So why is that? Why is the process any different? Because they all have to go through the same thing. Like they have an idea and they have to go through different loops up until it's finalized. And this is, it's very different. If you want to author an ERC, you have your idea, you write it down, you follow the format, you get it merged, and that's basically it. And there is no guarantee of quality. That's why it's quite easy to build a final ERC. You're supposed to make sure that the community hears about it and can provide feedback, and you're supposed to make sure that you engage and you consider other similar ideas and that you make your best effort to make something useful. But nobody's going to verify that. And there are final ERCs that are really bad, and there are sometimes multiple final ERCs that are addressing the same issue in different ways. If you want to do an EIP, good luck. It's basically the same process in the beginning, except at some point you'll have to go to an all core dev meeting and convince core dev that it's a good idea, that they put your EIP inside a hard fork. And that's where you have to prove that it's not just a sound idea, but it's secure, it's valuable of their time and effort, it's not going to affect the network's security or throughput or whatever, and you have to get it scheduled, and you're fighting with other EIPs on that very limited bandwidth that they have. And yeah, ideally you'd be aligned with the Ethereum roadmap. And if you're included, that doesn't mean you're getting used. Maybe like a few EIPs have led to precompile that nobody cares about. But overall, like just being included is already a great metric for success. And you have to fit somewhere in the middle of this. If you don't, well, good luck. People have tried, it's very frustrating. And most ERC's authors, they come to the EIP process with just an idea of, yeah, I want to involve the EVM so that contracts can be a bit better and so on. But if it doesn't align with this throw map, yeah, it's very, very difficult to get attention. And even things that you as an ERC author feels are very minimal change to the EVM, the EIP edit, the core dev will see that very differently because they see it as a potential risk for the blockchain. So yeah, conclusion is like, as an ERC author, you can be tempted to write EIPs, understand that it's going to come with a lot of frustration. If you do it as part of a team, you have a lot more chances. If you are aligned with the Ethereum roadmap, is way better. If you don't find anybody to work with you on that as a team, probably not worth pursuing because like you need to convince the entire ecosystem. So if you cannot convince 2 or 3 people to help you, you're not going to a good direction. And in the end, it may feel that finalizing an ERC is way easier, and it is, but it's not a guarantee of quality. And in the end, there are very, very few out of the 300 and something final ERCs that are actually useful and that have impacted the ecosystem. So while you may think that it's easy to go the ERC way, in the end, having an ERC that has a high impact on the entire ecosystem might actually be as hard as getting an EIP included. But you won't know if you succeed or not until years after you've basically written it. And if you want to have an idea of what I feel are good ERCs that have impacted the ecosystem positively, you can watch my talk from last year. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. We have 5 minutes for a question. Anyone have? Yes?
Should there be some kind of quality check over ERCs?
There should be.
And what kind of?
We would need a process for that. We don't have a process. Reviewing ERCs is a very big effort from the ERC editor. They're already doing a lot of effort just reviewing that the document align with the required format. Deciding whether an ERC is valuable and a good solution and meaningful to a generic solution to a generic problem is difficult, and I'm not sure anybody in this space wants to be taking that responsibility. You have companies that come to the space with products and they want to say that they are doing standards, so they take their product specification, they put that in an ERC document, they say, oh, look, it's standard 8,000 something something, we implement it, but it's the other way around, it's standardizing their implementation, and they say they are standard behavior, and this, even if the thing is in draft and you see any issues, you want to come as a community member and say, hey, you could do it better, they are going to say, yeah, but it's our product, it's been live for 2 years, so we're not going to move it. And a lot of ERCs are basically like that. I don't want to blame anybody, but it's the thing. So I'm not sure anybody wants to start fighting these kind of behaviors or try to take ERCs, because an ERC can be draft and can be very, very useful. 4237 is still a draft, and people use it, and it's part of a big thing. So not everybody wants, like, you would have to go to all the ERC, comment, and so on, and give feedback, and someone would have to go see the authors to make sure it goes in the right direction, or you'd have to change the authors. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and the benefit of doing all this hard work is not really clear. So, I mean, I think the solution is everybody in this room and out there should take part of their responsibility. If we share that responsibility, if we all go to the East Magician Forum to leave comments, and if we all push, maybe we can achieve something, but I'm not optimistic.
So I think part of the benefit is, you know, there's 8,000 ERCs to look through, and if you've got no measure of this is somebody's product written up in a different way, or this is an actually widely used standard, then there's no market signal. It's a massive amount of work to be able to say, these are the things I need to look at. Those things might be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are not 8,000. The way there are number means there are way fewer than that. But it's true that it's sometimes difficult to navigate. And honestly, like, this is also where I think we as Open Zeppelin, we are part of the solution in the sense that we spend time reviewing these things and looking at them and identifying the ones we think are valuable to provide implementation so that people that have a product need can go to our thing and say, like, okay, they do it that way using this ERC. Maybe I don't have to go through the many hundreds that exist to find the one that is meaningful. But also we don't implement all of them. And if you think that what you want to do has not been implemented yet, you'll have to go through the list. And it's a very tedious process. And I think what's even more tedious is when you want to write one, you should make the effort, and it's a very hard effort, to try to understand what is the core problem you are trying to fix and take a few steps back from what you're actually building, from like how we could generalize that. And that's a very difficult effort to do when you are building the thing. When you are reviewing an ERC, it's also very difficult to do. That's also why, like, having external people review ERC, maybe some of them will have the right angle, point of view to do that discussion, but ERC editors are not the right persons to do that, I guess.
Okay, next question.
Yes.
Thank you. So my question goes related to the use of AI. I have noticed that since we have LLMs, people don't go too much to Ethereum magicians and comment. I think the discussion is basically dropping. So do you see any solution or way to encourage people to actually contribute in a non-automated way?
I mean, I see how you could use AI to scroll through the list of ERCs and try to get feedback from that. But at some point, when you want to comment and build a standard, we have to do it as a community. Like, if you talk to your agent locally, that's not how you're going to spread knowledge. So maybe AI. I mean, AI has been used to some extent in the EIP process to summarize EIPs before a hard fork and to help people review the thing, understand what's going into a hard fork, and engage better. So maybe my comment is. We'll still need, I think, the ETH Magician forum to discuss. Maybe we need an AI agent that scrolls to that, creates summary, and presents them in a very easy to understand way on social media or on whatever platform to help people identify the signal from the noise and direct their effort to the right location. But in the end, the decision should be human to human, in my opinion.
Okay.
Another question? Yes.
Thank you for your talk. Maybe it's a dumb question, but if I wanted to create a standard, should I start with an EIP or an ERC?
It really depends on what your standard is about. If your standard is, I want to standardize the way smart contracts are composed on chain, the way different contracts will communicate with one another, or the way an external tool like a wallet will do signatures on chain, this is an ERC. And the standard is helpful if you want to synchronize actors, but those are things you can do on your own without a standard if you wanted to. You would do an EIP if you are trying to modify the behavior of the network. If you want to get included in a hard fork, say, from now on, I need a precompile that does this cryptography, or from now on, I want to add an opcode that does count leading zeros, which has been added recently, that you'd have to say, like, I need to modify the consensus for everyone, and that would have to go through an EIP. And if the community and core dev basically don't agree and don't modify the behavior of the EVM, there is nothing you can do about that as an individual.
Okay, thank you.
So it's end. Thanks again for presentation.